Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Christopher Z, of course, and Mikey Allstar here. Today we have another commentary video. Oh yeah, so the trend for these is to do them after every 6 new short films, and I've gotten 6 out very recently, so I figured we should talk about that, so let's go ahead and do it, shall we? This we are going to be going over Leave a Message, Sound Designed, his song, Incognito, Bottoms Up, and finally, Joe. So let's go ahead and start off with Leave a Message. It's been quite a while since I thought about this one. This one came out about over a year ago, so it hasn't been quite on my mind very much. But this one, basically, the idea with it was like, what if, we all sort of sometimes rely on friends on occasion, whenever we're feeling down or whatever, we sort of go to them. And this guy here is, of course, like it's kind of a cliche twist. We've seen it before in different things. Like probably like one of the more recent things I can think of that does this is the Civil War, where Zemo keeps on calling his family and listens to the last message that they recorded and whatever. So there is that. But yeah, so this idea that this guy is just calling his friend that is sadly has passed away, and he's like, oh man, yeah, that's sort of comforting, thinking that hey, this guy is responding to me and he's still alive or whatever. It's sort of like being in denial and whatnot. So of course, like a lot of these films are a little darker. So there you go. But as it turns out, that in the end, the twist, of course, is that he is kind of back to life. Who knows how he's back to life? Maybe some sort of like crazy witch doctor or something brought this guy back to life, or maybe in the end it's not necessarily that he's alive, but the main character is haunted by the fact that this guy is dead, and maybe he feels guilty or something like that, perhaps. So there you go. Because truly, he is guilty that the car accident that happens that kills his friend is, yeah, he was the one driving. So there you go. It sort of follows that formula of like introducing the idea and then sort of like expanding upon it, where like it's sort of gets this idea that hey, he's calling his friend or whatever, and sort of expands upon that and shows that of course like it adds more context to the situation, that of course naturally his friend is not alive anymore. So pretty simple. Some of these I like to sort of experiment with stories, other ones just sort of just for fun, other times I want to experiment with camera techniques or editing or whatever. So some of these yeah, have sort of like a more experimental edge to them, but this one was just sort of a story that I had in mind, just like thinking about things and just like wanted to make something that was somewhat emotional and something that sort of tackles the idea of guilt and sort of like this person trying to shove their guilt away by thinking about like, oh, this didn't happen, like being in denial. So yeah, that's pretty much it with this one. This one was a fairly simple one, but it was fun to make, and it was a little bit on the longer side too. I wanted to sort of like go back to formula of some of these and make them a little shorter, but not all of them quite got to that point. So there we go. Now this next one, Sound Design, was really fun to make. Of course, once again, a very dark story as well. And this one actually was inspired by a movie, if you've ever heard of the movie Blowouts with John Travolta, which was directed by Brian De Palma. Came out in the 80s, I believe, the early 80s, if I'm not mistaken. And it's basically the story of a sound designer, and he picks up like this murder on tape, and he sort of like gets wrapped up in this whole thing, this whole bigger plot and stuff like that. It's really great. And the ending, to not spoil it, is really good. I love the ending. It's fantastic. The overall movie is great too. I recommend it if you're interested in that sort of thing. But this is sort of what came out of that, this idea of like what is the origin of this sound that this guy uses. So it's sort of like looking at this guy that like once again, dark stories, like puts these people out of their misery and uses that. He sort of like gets something out of it, that he's like helping these people because they're so miserable and they don't want to be here anymore, and he takes that and gets these really realistic sound effects, and sort of that's the sort of tragedy of it. I feel like if I had to redo this one, maybe I would start it off with the sound effect and then whoop back around, but I feel like that would also possibly be a little too much like Blowouts. So yeah, but anyways, this was a fun one to make, and I accidentally made the thumbnail in color. The thumbnail is supposed to be the same filter as the as the movie or the short film typically, but this instance it was not. And I didn't notice it until later. I was like, I did that on purpose. If I didn't say that, you would just assume that I did it on purpose. But in my mind, I sort of retconned it to be like, yeah, that that mistake. No, it wasn't a mistake. That was on purpose. Even though, yeah, it was totally a mistake. But yeah, this one was very fun to make, and especially like I think about sound a lot because I work with sound quite a bit on the audio dramas that we make, and that was sort of one of the things I really wanted to put into this. I wanted to like really focus on the sound a little more because whenever I make these things, I do focus on the sound, but the sound isn't always the main thing I'm focusing on. Mostly for these ones, like I said before, it's sort of an experiment. So usually I focus more on the visuals and perhaps the story itself rather than the sound and some of the other editing stuff. Of course, I don't just like I'm gonna close my eyes and whatever is put on the timeline is on there in the video. No, I do of course pay attention and do try to find the best sort of sound for the videos, and of course the music is very important as well. The music is helping to convey the emotions of the piece, so I choose that very, I don't just like just put it on a board and like throw a dart at it or something like that to choose what song I'll use. But yeah, that this one was definitely like a little bit more of a focus on the sound because I feel like with sound, one of the things about good sound is that it's usually not noticed. You'll notice bad sound, like sound like, oh, what is that sound effect? That doesn't sound right at all. That doesn't sound like what that would make. But then like really good sound that fits in, that feels so natural. It feels like the camera just captured that and not like a sound designer like actually putting that in. You wouldn't normally notice, like, oh, you think about like, hey, the thing I love about this movie, the sound, man, the sound of the gun, wow, so that's something I want to really focus on too. That I think that really good sound design is either so good and iconic that it's instantly recognizable, like lightsabers and stuff like that, or it's just really good and realistic that people just don't even notice it. So sound design, boom. So next up we had another sort of music video. I like making these. I think it's really fun. Taking a song. I'm inspired by music when I write and when I think about ideas sometimes. So I wanted to take this this song here, of course, Killing Me Softly with his song. I think it's such a beautiful song that I had this idea of like this sort of like love story between these two guys and whatnot. One of them is a hitman and then, things go south and he has to kill his lover or whatever, and then he's like, no, I'm gonna die with him. So it's sort of like a tragic love story. So I thought that'd be really fun. It's really, working with music is really interesting because with it you have to really time it. Like it's all in the timing, like for music videos specifically. Like this is basically just a music video. It's about, of course, like hitting sort of the feeling of the song, like sort of capturing what the song is trying to say, or perhaps capturing the opposite of what the song is trying to say. Like a few of the ones that I've made in the past, this is still a darker one, but have been like sort of in contrast to the song. The song is nice and happy, but the actual like video is like, yeah, nobody's happy in this video. They're all dead. So it's kind of like what I like to think about, like songs like that, like Maxwell's Silver Hammer. It has such a happy sound to it, but if you pay attention to the lyrics, things are not exactly going very well in that situation, are they? So that's sort of what I like to think about. But here, though, I've been doing that a lot in the past, but I wanted to do something different. This song, I feel like it's sort of like the song itself has like sort of this darkness, like this, not necessarily like tragedy, but this sort of like depth to it that I think is really interesting. Perhaps maybe there's like some sort of like romantic tragedy a little bit embedded in there, but it's just like has that sound that just like really just like pulses through you. You can just like, you could feel in your soul. So I wanted to bring that to life and make a love story. So there we go. And it was really fun making this. Once again, like I said, when working with music, it's a lot different than just filming normally because you have to like really pay attention to the sort of the beats and everything. You have to keep track of the song. Like whenever I film stuff like this, I play the song as I'm recording. So it would be easier with multiple people. I'm doing this by myself. Mikey can't operate a phone because his hands just doesn't like his skeletal hand is not ideal for using a cell phone, a touchscreen. So I'm just here, hit play, and then as soon as like the part that I'm on starts, boom, start recording, and then stop recording, and then all this sort of craziness. And I fine tune it when I edit it. I don't use the audio that I recorded because you can hear the song when I record it, but I mute it and then I put the song in, and whatever, easy. So it's very fun making stuff like this, and I will make more. I have an idea for another one. It's going to be difficult, but it'll be fun. So it's probably the hardest one I've made. This one is probably the hardest one that I've made so far because the other ones, it's more or less just like sort of filling out time and just like sort of telling a story in that time. But this one was more like, it sort of like matched a little better with the song, perhaps just a little bit. Like there's like some pieces. Anyways, though, yeah, his song was very fun to make. I very much enjoyed the process of that. It was definitely one of the more challenging ones I've made, but it was very fun nevertheless. Next up, Incognito. This is, of course, inspired by fairly recent events, not the whole strike, of course, but AI in general. AI is something that has been taken out of its genie bottle and cannot be put back. It's here to stay, and we have to figure out how to deal with it, how to, legislate it, how to control it, and how to use it wisely and not in very stupid ways that cause people a lot of pain. Let's not have a Terminator situation as well. I feel like nuking a lot of things with AI, having an AI that just like goes rogue and nukes a bunch of things. It's probably not the best situation. So let's not have any situations like that. But I was thinking about AI art and how AI art is very interesting and a very touchy subject because, for one, it's ugly, right? Like it looks good, but it also looks very sterile. It doesn't look real because it isn't real. It's artificial, and it steals these art styles from people. These people actually make this art style. Like, hey, could you make this thing, make it look like a Ghibli movie? And it's like, all right, it just does it itself, and it can be pretty cool. But it's also like, oh, but you're taking away people's jobs. Like, just messing around with AI art, I think is fine. But using it for like official projects, like, you could. There's people that would probably do that for you. You could pay them perhaps if you don't have any money. Get some money and then pay them, right? But yeah, AI art I think is, it's not art. So, yeah, I just wanted to sort of like just think about like AI. Like when I was making this video, I was thinking about it like sort of like this replacements of people, like people using, like, companies like considered using AI like to write their scripts. Like, have they actually used AI to write stuff? Because it's very soulless and terrible. I've messed around with stuff like that and had things being written as like, wow, this is really bad. Thank you, AI. You are doing great. You're not replacing writers. Not yet, at least. Hopefully not in the future. But yeah. So this whole idea was sort of like based on like people being replaced by robots. Wow. Ooh. But I sort of like I introduced like robots in the story as like, oh, they just look like these. Like, you're very obvious to see that this is indeed a robot. And yeah, in some instances, perhaps, yeah, it's very obvious to see. Especially right now, it's very obvious to see. When something is AI and when something is made by AI. It's like, yeah, you can really tell when it's made by AI. Usually, like I said, once again, it's soulless, doesn't have that human element to it. It can be like kind of like in the weird sort of like perfect but not perfect, where it looks really good but it looks too good, kind of like that. And also, it just looks, just there's a fake quality to it. Like I said, the lack of the human element to it, really. Um, so I wanted to like have like, yeah, very obvious. You can see that guy's a robot in the beginning, but then the other people in the office, like those, like the janitor guy, like, yeah, robot. But the other guy is like, oh, the guy was a robot the whole time. I kind of like had this vision. Like the first thing that came to mind, well, I already said Terminator, but yeah, it was Terminator. Like, just remember the scene, if you've seen the movie, where Arnold's character is like fixing himself up, and you can like see his face, like he's like the human face. We can see like the robo shell underneath that and stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of a cool image. I kind of wanted to not necessarily replicate that, but sort of be inspired by that and have like the character like, oh, he gets a cut on himself or whatever, and he like his hand is like, it's a robotic hand. It's like, oh my god, he's a robot. They're replacing people with robots. So sort of that idea. It was very fun to make Incognito, and sometimes I just like throwing in random things just because. So there's a dot at the end of it because why is that there? I don't know. Just because it's kind of fun. Anyways, yeah, Incognito was sort of like just me thinking about AI, and yeah, sort of the exercise that came out of that was what Incognito became. So next we have Bottoms Up. This was also one that I really just wanted to think about the editing. Like, the editing was definitely one of the most important parts of this. There's this idea, for Imperial England, that, oh yeah, so there's these sailors that got conscripted into the Navy because they got a drink, and then, oh wow, you get this drink, and then they see like something at the bottom of the glass, like, hey, by the way, you're in the Navy now, you owe me this. The person that bought this drink for you, well, guess what, you owe them. Now you must fulfill your Navy duties in order to pay them back. So there we go. Haha. And that was sort of the basis of this idea. Like, hey, this guy that bought a drink for you, guess what? You gotta kill somebody for him. Ooh. So there we go. That was just basically the idea where it came from. But what I really wanted to do, there's like one specific scene I had in mind when I first came up with this idea. The shots of like this guy just getting like raging drunk, and of course he eventually wipes out. But the scene is like, it's like, I think it's like 7 or so like I've recorded 7 individual scenes and I put them all on top of each other. I thought it looked really cool, and I like how it turned out. It's sort of like I turned down the opacity. Why did I say opacity weird like that? Opacity. I turned down the opacity. I turned down the opacity to it, and I just put them all together in DaVinci Resolve, which is a great free program if you like editing. It can be a little bit of a hefty program sometimes. A little heftier than Windows Live Movie Maker, I will say. It's a free program, and of course I'm obviously not sponsored by them. But it's pretty good. If you're interested in editing, it's a little more complex. You get color stuff, you can do color correction, you can mess with all sorts of crazy things, transitions, yada yada. There's a paid version, but the free version has a lot of good stuff, so I use the free version. But that's how I did that. I sort of put it into DaVinci Resolve. I put all the clips together and changed the opacity, cut them in and out, and boom, there we go. Overlaid some audio and stuff like that, so that was very fun to do. Everything else is fairly basic. It's sort of like, kind of feels like, I believe it's Welcome Tenants. There's like a shot, there's like a bit where this guy like gets like co-opted by the Shades, the main boss guy from Compendium, the anthology series. That he's the main character of Done in Smoke and Hell. Done in Smoke of Hell. I'm so used to saying that. I changed the name last minute. But yeah, so it's sort of like that. Like, you get to see like, oh, the guy go in and bang bang, this guy sneaks around and stuff, and he still gets the guy in the end, and he's like, all right, and then yeah, he gets screwed in the end. So yeah, that was very fun to make. The most of it was basically an editing exercise, but it was very fun to come up with a story too. And then of course, last and certainly not least, I was making a lot of dark stuff. I like making these stories dark. But there are like a few that are like sort of haha, maybe a little comedy in there mixed with some of the macabre or whatever. I try to make like one or two sort of more comedic ones every now and again. Very rarely. The next one, not so much, but the next one I'm thinking about, it's going to be coming up soon, so keep your eyes out if you're interested. But yeah, this one I wanted to make something kind of funny and stupid. It's like, what if there's a hitman named Joe Mama? Why? I don't know. Why not? So he goes in there and he takes care of business. It's sort of like the standard thing I do, like, oh, you got the guys at the door protecting the guy at top. How many times have you seen that in my videos? A million times, right? But then you have this final confrontation where the guy's like, at least tell me your name before you kill me. And he's like, do I have to? He's like, I'm trying to get it changed. He's like, please tell me, please. So the guy just gets humiliated. This super awesome, cool guy, bad apple guy, goes in there and wreaks havoc, one of those things. He does some havoc, and he goes up to the top, and he's like, I'm a cool guy. And then this guy like brings him down to like 4-0. He's like, hey, what's your name, by the way? And he has to tell him his name, and he's embarrassed, and he's like, oh, come on, it's not, he's like, I didn't choose the name, alright, my parents chose the name. So, yeah, that was just sort of a fun one, and I don't usually use the blue filter, because I think it could be a little bit much. I think it works in some instances, but other times, like, it's a little too much. I think I've used it 3 times, and this is the 3rd time, I'm pretty sure. Actually, no, I think I used it 4 times. One of them was very unsuccessful. Help needed. That one needed help, alright, I'm telling you right now. But this one I was like, alright, you know what? I was feeling in a blue mood, so I was like, I'm gonna do this one in blue. So there we go. Interestingly enough, as a tangent, all 3 of the comedic ones, the block, what's this one called? Location Scouting and Joe, are different color filters. The block is based on writer's block, and that one is in black and white. Location Scouting is in sepia, I don't know how to pronounce it, but one of those filters. And then this one is in blue, so the next one is going to be in purple. I don't know, maybe, but anyways, there we go. That's about it. Those were all of the short films. That was, of course, Leave a Message, Sound Design, his song Incognito, Bottoms Up, and Joe. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.